intense internationalism you can also include. So we never, though there are various problems, otherness is always there and it was always there. But some kind of accommodation, assimilation, integration, it was inbuilt into sort of Hinduism.
Yes, it is Szczerbatsky wrote about logics, Buddhist logic, and he said that in the Buddhist logic there is not another as different for me. There is the other and me in the same whole. For this reason, for example, there is not only two solutions or two values, positive or negative, me and the other, but only with the third values also. So it's a more complicated logic. But I think that we speak about different things. We understand each other, but we speak about different things. One thing was that of different visions, Chinese, Indian, and so on. But another aspect is that of vision from, vision from which criteria? And there are common elements, common aspects, and there are different elements and different aspects. But there are different things, and because I finish, because you spoke about the European model. There is no one European model. There are many European models. And we speak, yes, and we speak about political models and economic models. So for this reason, I said
there's still a kind of European model.
Yeah, no.
No.
For this reason, I said that we speak about different things. So the European model, there is no one European model. There is an economic European model.
There is no Indian model. There is no Chinese model. So we will finish without.
No. I think that we can reduce a little things to philosophical paradigms. And from this reason, for example, for Europe, I put Kant, the categorical imperative. This is a very beautiful model. So it's not a political model, it's not an economic model, not a model of domination and so on, not a model of not understanding each other, but on the contrary, it's a model of understanding each other in this logic of the third included. Because the categorical imperative of Kant, it's absolutely clear. The other is not an enemy. The other is like me. Of course, is an individual like me, but I must take the other as me, as myself, as I take myself as a means, and not only as an end, not only as a means. This is so. I am not a partisan to insist on the differences. So this is my partisanship. Differences between India and China.
Yeah, something that troubles me. So, for example, of course there are, in, let's say, Hindu world vision, Hebrew world vision, European, whatever. But where do we draw the lines? For example, George Edwin is a Christian in India. Yes. You had as a guest a week before, or 2 weeks before, yes, a Buddhist from Switzerland. So I don't think that Indian worldview means the continent of India, or Chinese worldview is what's between the borders of China. So I think they are more fluid than we might think. For example, the Brits got out from the European Union, but it's obvious that there are more Europeans than the Romanians. So they address the European values in a more sincere and profound way than my mates from the neighborhood here in Iași. So they are more European than we are, even if they are not in the European Union. There are Buddhists in Switzerland and Christians in India. So I think these identities must not be seen geographically at all, not be seen even historically. Because Lawrence of Arabia was more Arab than whatever kamikaze nowadays.
And Faisal of Arabia.
Yeah, I would like
Faisal of Arabia.
Faisal, yeah, exactly, because he was killer.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. You know, sorry.
Yeah, I agree, that's a very important point, and I would like to add something. Of course, we can speak about culture at different levels, from the very abstract to the very concrete, and maybe we can elaborate on that later on. But how does it manifest at the individual level? Because we already mentioned ethnic cultures, national cultures, and we even hinted, we described some cultural paradigms, the Indian, the Chinese, and we spoke about culture as associated, defined with the human species. Because let's face it, we cannot really conceive of a culture outside humanity. But how about culture at an individual level, which is the meeting point of so many of our coordinates, which are ethnic, racial, gender coordinates, national coordinates? And how about that manifestation of cultures in the individual when it moves around, when it encounters another individual? What happens then in terms of borders and the understanding of what culture is?
My fundamental question is, if we have some very basic settings, original, let's say the original software, the kind of original software, you know, that somehow puts our emotions in a certain way, and this can be a kind of fundamental approach to reality. I don't know if it is something like that, or it is something you can change more or less, but I doubt somehow. I don't know.
I think we have, but who's we?
Huh?
With the Romanians, with the Balkans, with the Europeans, who's we? What are the limits of this we? So what are we?
Yes.
We, when we are drunk, we are
Yeah.
drinking, we drink, we will do it in a different way, you know? This is basic.
So there are different aspects.
I know Russians who don't drink. I know a few. So
Russians.
these are
They must be dead.
aliens.
I had a quarrel.
Scott,
I had a quarrel with my wife, and she is professor of geography. And I told her Romania is a Balkanic country, and she told me no, we have no Balkanic mountains on the territory of the country. And I told her no, it doesn't matter.
So culture is not geographical.
Yeah.
Well, coming back to, I think
Not only.
it's true that there are probably not monolithic cultures, you know, that are Indian or Chinese in that sense. That there are multiple kinds of. I mean, the Punjab is probably different to Kerala or whatever street names, but you know, there's differences in regions where, you know, and they're quite big. I mean, China and India are very big places, so to talk about Indian culture and Chinese culture is probably, I think, very difficult to in that sense. But there is another issue, I think, that we face in that encounter idea, and it's a problem that Alistair McIntyre raises in relation to how we view another tradition and another culture. We can only do it from within our own standpoints. So that creates a problem. So when I hear, you know, you're talking about cycles, perhaps. And you're understanding it in a particular, let's say, Indian fashion. I'm probably hearing it in a Western kind of fashion. Now, that just as an example. So when I judge, well, can we take on some of this understanding? I'm thinking, well, in our terms, in our tradition, it's not going to work. That's a nonsense kind of idea. So I then begin to judge another culture from my standpoint. The question then becomes, in that encounter, how do we get past that? And it seems to me, and that McIntyre ends up in this, I guess, in his series of books, and he starts off with this right back in the beginning of after virtue and then the progression. And where you end up with, or have to end up with, is a kind of human anthropology that's universal. Otherwise, how can we begin to understand each other if there aren't any commonalities? And I guess that what brings that home to me is watching a Chinese film, and I don't speak Chinese, and following what's going on. And there are the same universal things you see there. You know, the star-crossed lovers, for example. I mean, you can see that. Well, there's the woman, there's the man, and you can see that, you know, they love one another and all of this. And then there's a problem, there's something else happens. And you can follow all of this. Why? Because there are certain universal things. The same goes with Indian things. If I watch an Indian film, which I have no, it's in Hindustani, I know nothing, but you can follow. And so how is that possible when I have no, clearly I'm interpreting it in certain kinds of ways, but I don't think I'm misinterpreting, I guess is what I'm saying. So that's only possible if there are certain kinds of universalities, like love and hate and envy and jealousy, all of those kinds of human emotions that are available to us all. Now once we have that, I guess, then we can begin to have some kind of common ground on which to begin to understand each other. Now it may not be enough, I don't know.
But if we put the stress on individual aspect, the question is maybe how much you can change through these encounters, no? Or what is the possibility? What was practically your point?
I was just trying to shift the focus to individual encounters, because Professor Kang said that through intercultural encounters, what you experience first is difference. Difference doesn't need to be, it could be positive or negative, but the very experience of difference is important. That's when you realize there is an alternative. There is a different worldview that can be expressed by two people, two individuals at the same table, and they will understand one another, at least in the sense that they have different stories to tell. But we all share into storytelling, don't we? We all tell stories, we can all recognize the patterns in the Bollywood production and the Chinese movie and everything. So this experience of difference, I think, is the first step, and what we do with it.
Yeah, we could also experience sameness too, couldn't we? You know, in the encounter, for example, supposing there's a Chinese person and myself, and there's a big explosion somewhere. We're both faced with danger. So we react, we turn to one another and maybe act the same way to do something. So again, I mean, you're right about the difference, but I think there's also, we don't want to overemphasize difference, I think. We need to also think about the fact that we are the same in many respects. We conceive of things in different ways. I mean, a different mindset, I mean, that's true. I mean, there are cultural things, but underlying those, I think they're more or less different perspectives on the same reality, really. I guess that's where the
So
start.
please add your perspective.
Yeah.
You speak about, you know, the Jew. It's a burden of 5,000 years, so excuse me if I won't succeed in that. But I'll try to say some words. Think about borders and the singular perspective. The word that came across last night after the day was the transformation, this vital, dynamic change. Again, as an expert in community, a community is something that is ageless. I mean, it will keep on going unless, of course, exterior forces will, do something. So there were three words as a wandering Jew. Wondering. First is what do we preserve while doing this or going through this transformation? What do I keep with me? What is it that I need to have and manifest? And the second one is the opposite. What do I give up? What do I leave? What do I leave behind? What do I neglect or just let go in a way? And then creation. It's the third aspect. What do I renew? What do I make out of something that wasn't and then might be in the future to become? So these are two. And then I thought about this Jew paradigm. So I think that two things that came up immediately, and maybe Dorit will add up. We keep on questioning all the time. If you look at the Gemara, this Talmud, which are books written on behalf of the Bible, they're all the time critical thinking and taking Moses as the leader and kick his ass all the time, asking questions. What did you think, or why did you, and etc. And something very, very, even myself when I came from the stage and Dorit asked me how was it, I said, no, I wasn't coherent. I forgot that. I all the time, and it's not, it's not slamming myself, but it's something that is deep rooted. Also, talking about my father was born in Vienna, spoke German and then Yiddish and then a few more languages, and my mother was born in Rovno, which is between Ukraine and Poland. So again, we're expert in borders, moving and shifting as a wandering Jews. So questioning and critical thinking would be the first aspect for me, and the second one is telling stories. It's really deep rooted in our of course in culture and mythology and the myth, and also you learn in school in Israel Torah or in heart.
The oral Torah.
The oral Torah, which was
orally.
translated in by telling stories, and it's also the. And last thought, I read this article trying to figure out how come so many Jews won the Nobel Prize, and there are many. No, but why? Was it? Is it the mother? The Jew? It was always said that it's the Jewish mother, forcing him, study, you have to succeed. But he gave another answer, and that's about storytelling. We're just good storytellers because when you tell a story, you persuade either yourself or the other, and then move forward. So we're just good storytellers. That's it. So these are my notions.
Thank you all for being here, and I'm also amazed how different we are, and also how similar we are, because we are here together because something is similar to all of us, and I think we can be together only through our similarities. Also, I want to mention that I see culture on different levels, starting from individual level, then going to family, country, and humanity in total. And with all different levels, I see borders on all the levels. And why do we have these borders? This is a question that rooted me from yesterday, because there should be something good in having borders. We are thinking about overcoming borders, going over the fence. But what if it's nothing good over the fence? As Professor Kang said yesterday, what if learning to be human is bad, or will lead to bad outcomes? So this is why I tried to think, why do we have border? And I come into myself and see I'm very weak, I'm very stupid, and I will die. This is, I think this may be true for many people. And for this, I have to do something with my life. I have to find some perfection in it. And I think everyone from here is having the path until death to achieve perfection. And each, this is maybe similarity, but each of us is doing it different manner. We have our culture with Christianity, and we have our own way of doing this, and this is our border, and we cannot achieve this outside our border. And the way I see the encounter with the other is a way of verifying ourselves if we are on the good way or not. This is why I think we meet here. We are going through this path, and I'm verifying with you if I'm on the good path. So, in a way, I know I will never understand a different culture.
It's a way of testing.
Yes, the way I will never understand Chinese culture, I'll never understand Indian culture, but I can be together with you, and we can be together in our own way. This assumption that we can understand each other is very, very weak. It's unstable, and it's impossible, I would say. Only thing we can do as I can see, we can be together and we verify ourselves in our own culture. This is a way to keep our dignity as a human, as an individual, as a part of a country, and as part of humanity. This is how we keep our dignity. And also we can be together. Thank you.
Good point. You want to add something?
And this is why the good of the borders, we can achieve perfection only within our borders. If you go out of the borders, we may lose ourselves.
Thank you.
I was just thinking that the whole purpose of this particular thing is we are progressing towards relearning to be human for global time. Global times, not global universality, but global times. So it's, I think, not keeping as a kind of an endeavor to achieve something, but kind of an experience something is more important. For example, simple as I don't come here to understand you. I want to know you. No, I want to experience you. I want to encounter you. So with that level is different. So I think, yeah, this is what I feel it should move to, rather than knowing something but encountering them. And therefore, in that level, I find that for me, more and more from any culture, it's never expressed in theory. It's always expressed in imagination, stories, in art, in flowery, in colorful sketches. I think that is what will enhance. That will enhance. In fact, I perceive this particular beautiful group, wonderful group, so much of ideas, but I don't stop with the ideas. I see the person in you. And so the last point that I really want to say was, although my Indian perspective, as Alexandru was saying, I'm Indian but Christian, it's not contrary at all. Why? The soulful element, the soul element, and the enchanting element of the nobility of the human person is something which is always transcendent. So that is where I think we are encounter. So in fact, culture, for me, though it is human aspect, culture is so good, so big, it's because it's able to transcend. It's able to make every one of us transcend.
In what
So
way? What is the meaning of transcendence?
That transcendence is not just knowing you, but also loving you, or also,
Experiencing you
yes.
in a loving
manner. Yeah, exactly. That is more. So I personally feel that is what will help us to understand the border as not a limit. Border is there. I'm not saying no, but border is not a limit. We can always crisscross. And that encounter is what I think will make us more human.
Professor Kang, maybe the Chinese perspective on the same aspect?
No, actually, I think that especially, you know, actually in China also we have different kind of the culture. From the Confucianism, that's the main idea, main academic idea and the political idea and the moral idea. They actually ask for, if you are good enough, you should go to the society to serve the people and some others. We call that Lei Shen Wai Wang. That means if you are honest enough, that you should become a political leader. But for Taoism, they don't want. They just want let's keep our health. So they go to the mountain and go to the beach and they want to have a good life. They hope we can live now forever. But for different kind, for example, Buddhism also into China, but some Chinese culture also influenced Chinese Buddhism. They already maybe changed it or not. They got something from the Confucianism and some others. So already, because you know Chinese culture is very strong. All even athletes, they come into China. They try to be used, combined with some traditional Chinese cultures. So it's
maybe the question is this the individual level of experience is so strong like in the Indian version, or it's more related to community, to doing together maybe? So it's not so important what is your very subjective
actually in Chinese culture, actually I just know I mentioned the five. The last one is the spirit. Actually, spirit is based on the individual identity. How can you define yourself in a whole system? That's the most important thing. And in traditional Chinese culture, mainly they ask for the collective and the family values. Yesterday I mentioned that. Because the people think as a member of the family is actually all the family a member of the society. So if I serve good to the family, and I can also serve good as the country and the society. So in China, we call the family and the country is the same thing. 家国合一, that's in Chinese traditional culture. So if you like the country, you should like your family. If you want to contribute to the country, you should first let your family be good. So we ask for the 修身齐家治国平天下. That's the first you should build yourself good. Then you can have a good family. Then you can manage the country. Then you can serve to the heaven. Yesterday I talked to the heaven and earth. That's the traditional Chinese culture. So when China across think the individuals, they always put individuals in a big system. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the family, the group, no? Yeah, a different kind. Yeah. That's why Chinese can name Marxism very well. You know, because you know Karl Marx said, "Oh, if you want to label human being, if you want to label yourself, first you should label human being." That means 只有解放全人类，才能最后解放自己. So that's the kind of understanding. So in China, it is a very clear individual consciousness, but it put this into a big soga. Yeah, I think that's different. Yeah.
So from the Jew perspective, you can add something?
It's quite similar, actually, in a way. Since we were tribes at the beginning and just one left, these are the Jews, it's out of other 11 missing. You can relate, I can relate to a very strong connection, and therefore also you know, writing and living for and research of community. Kibbutz it's not a mistake or a chance. It's it's imported from Russia, but it was invented in Israel. And again, it's not a you know, historical mistake. I think that there were some, you know, different aspects of manifesting it 100 years ago. One more thing that I was thinking about, the singular is, for instance, is dependent on the bigger group. And again, if I address the community, you cannot pray if you're not 10 people. So I can find myself walking in the street and some Orthodox will come and ask me, please, can you join the congregation, because we cannot do it without you. Although I don't know them at all, they're total strangers for me. So it makes me get connected or be part of, or at least there is a call for me to participate all the time. Another thing that I was thinking yesterday, after your remark at the end of the evening about field or applied philosophy, is I wake up in the morning in order to make a better world, I suppose. Therefore, I'm in the field more than the research world, like most of you guys here. And the next question arose: what can we do, or what can we again do practically from this round table? I don't know, declaration, influence, I don't know, whatever I'm asking. What can be done, since there are many deep and very relevant to today's topics outside of this room. So that's 3 dots.
Can I say something about this? We are talking about, whether we are talking about interculture or intraculture or border culture, that should not be a thing to create a gap between man and man. So through what we are here for, or what the world should strive for, is to bridge the gap between man and man, irrespective of what culture we belong to. For that, we have to nurture various resources through various virtues, and that can nurture our inner self and help in ever widening unity. And I feel that humanity is, being human is an accomplishment, like playing a piano. You know, a little error can batter you from becoming human.
But all of these are in the European philosophical model of Kant. So what you said about China and what you said about India are in the European model of Kant. I said so, of big, good philosophers. So for this reason, we can observe the uniqueness, the particularity of Chinese culture, of Indian culture, and so on and so on, but at the same time, the universalism, the common features of human beings. So, in Kant, it's not something different than said or you. It's not something different.
I'm not sure how much Chinese culture Kant understood when he developed his model, you know?
I spoke
his
about
universalism
ideas,
is a certain way of understanding things, but I'm not sure about that.
But this is very important about the outcome, especially in the philosophy meetings, meetings related more or less with philosophy and values. The question always is, there is a real practical outcome, how we can describe this kind of outcome, no? One idea can be awareness. You become more aware of something because you are evaluating different aspects of that something. But of course, this is just one step, and this step is for the people are meeting, physically meeting. So I think for them is a good result. But going further is a problem. How we can export this to the others. So I think here is a problem, because if we publish a book, it's very good. But maybe a kind of this kind of interaction to be put it in a way more, not like a video, in a different way. I don't know, like a summary or something, like something that should have a kind of story, no? The story of maybe we can write this story together. I just thought now to work on the same document and to put like a story of our discussion of today, and to bring some outcome of this roundtable can be something worth for some other people. I don't know. It's a kind of awareness of borders, no? So maybe we can work on a common text, more or less. Of course, with names of our names when we add something. But indeed, I think this is the lack, the missing point of many of our meetings, because we are not able to say something to the others. And I think we have a critical mass, a critical number of people from different cultures, including John Farina and some others, to have enough complex perspective. But the point is how we can draw some outcome. So this is very good.
I can suggest something that is echoless, so be aware of. It's a warning. The wiki, everybody knows what wiki is. There is an option to edit a term or our theme of border and culture, but it's a shared document in the deepest meaning, without what you just mentioned, our names, because it is recorded. I mean, you can react to me and then delete, but it will be recorded. But the final document is a work of all of us, and without you can say a group, but it's not a person or plural, but it's an entity that sums up all of our thoughts together.
So you propose to work like this?
It's an option. I'm just putting it on the table. Maybe it will be rejected, but yeah.
So we'll add a new item to wiki?
It can be also closed. I don't know, I'm not keen technology, but it can be closed just for the members of this roundtable, so those who participate in the conference.
And then to export in several ways?
And after it's finished, you can open it to the world, in a way. Yeah. So it's an option.
We will be famous. Everybody knows Wikipedia.
One way or another, but we will.
Too famous.
Of course, maybe this can be the start of further pushing this question, because now there are fences built around the world, and this is dramatic. This is really dramatic.
That's why I suggested it, because it's a method that we do what we're talking about, in a way, or we practice what we think we talk about. Pardon?
Practice what you preach.
Yeah, exactly.
So please, John.
Oh, well. Look,
Australian perspective.
No, I wouldn't say it's an Australian perspective.
Both fences with kangaroos.
Kangaroos. Very long fences. Yeah, look, I think it's always good to have a practical outcome out of these things. Just coming back to that point, I know about wikis, but I haven't used one in years, so I'm a little sort of wary of that, because I might not know how to work and end up deleting everything. Yes, this button seems to be good. But and certainly publication is one. I mean, certainly for those of us who are in universities, our masters like to see something, concrete. And it certainly is one way of getting this kind of thing out into the broader kind of academic community. Just judging from some of the papers that we had yesterday, there is a pushback against the sort of ideological kind of stuff that we seem to be constantly faced with these days. I mean, I think we're under, in some sense, we're under siege, or as academics more broadly, that there's an element within the academic world which is not particularly doesn't seem to conform to what most academics would take as the way we should work. So there is, you know, room for this kind of discussion where we are trying to understand one another, to understand cultures, and to learn from one another. I mean, so I think a publication would be good, but just in terms of commonality, you know, we're sitting here talking as academics. We have a common ground, we have a common language. Some are using English. That has its own issues, I suppose, but it's one that we all are able to work in and understand. So there are, you know, when we talk about differing cultures, you know, when I listen to you or to you, I don't think of you, oh, that Indian fellow over there has got some Indian things to say. I just think of, he's speaking about things, and I understand what he's saying. I may not grasp all the nuances because there's a whole perspective I don't have, but then, you know, for each of us that's the same thing. But nevertheless, we're able to work together and bring those perspectives, and I think that's the beauty of it, that we do bring all these different ways of things. So, you know, things that I would not think of, you might say, somebody else will say. And even if I disagree violently, it's still, you know, a perspective that I need to react to. That's part of what we've been doing. So I would be in favour of maybe doing a wiki, or even, and I know this might sound a bit radical, but because it's a pushback against you know, the way in which we're controlled by publications and institutions and rankings and all the rest of it. But I have been involved in a couple of things where a whole group wrote something, a paper. Each person wrote maybe 500 words. Somebody has to put it together, and then it gets published. It gets reviewed, maybe with open review. I've been involved in 2 open reviews. The reviewers also get added to the list of, if they want to the list of authors. I mean, it's done in science. Look at the list, if you read a science thing, you know, the 341X hydro something or alase molecule and its derivatives. And you look at the list of people, and there'll be, you know, 20 people have contributed to this maybe short paper. And, you know, that's how the professor gets 50 papers a year. His name gets added on for each of these things, and he might have had only a little bit. So, I know, and it seems to work okay, you know, if we all contribute. I'm just suggesting that as another avenue.
It's very thick.
Yeah,
it's very close.
Yeah, but it gets into a journal, you know, and I think that could be a good vehicle that, you know, everybody can.
Also, we can work with our students based on this, because this was the problem. My problem was that I asked some of my students to come, and they purely don't realize how important it is to have this kind of experience. They don't understand what is the meaning of this kind of meeting. So maybe presenting the outcome of this, we will increase at least in Romania, the awareness of the importance of this kind of work. You know? Because to witness the kind of discussion like this, I think it is important for students, and not just maybe for some practical, more practical meanings, because you really work on this in Israel.
That's true.
So you can say something more based on our discussion. So some other can do.
Also, we have the recording, so we can type.
We could elaborate on,
but
of
course
from the recording.
We will add, we will change, we will do more. I think this should be. So
actually, I was thinking about output. Dorit had an interesting suggestion yesterday. You were saying, can you share with?
Of opening a WhatsApp group for this group, but I don't know if it's relevant for everyone, because it's a very convenient way of sharing information, thoughts, questions, documents, responding to each other.
On the topic, no? On this topic.
Yeah, on our topic.
Cultural borders?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
could actually be a means to produce a
And
common
then-
text.
Right, and then
To help.
So we don't work together in an online Word document or something, but we make a group. It can be a WhatsApp group or a different kind of group as you prefer. And there we could share our thoughts and ideas.
Continue to express,
Yes.
continue to express and continue to share.
Yeah. And then maybe from that, we will produce a wiki entry, and from that we can
Or
grow
an
a common
article.
article, which
Yeah.
would be a very interesting thing
Yeah,
to
it's
do.
an interesting concept to have a group
Yeah.
of, 10, 15 people.
So we will have group
Oh.
authorship of
Yeah.
Everybody contributes a little bit, and you're not, you don't just have your name against your little bit. It's the whole article is the work of the group.
And I guess it's
It's
easier if we have a
interesting.
group first, so we can see how it all combines, how the ideas combine, and what we can do, whether we just separately write a small section where we can actually work together as a group and produce something. And then let me also be a bit traditional, because we were contemplating publication, and after the presentations yesterday, I'm quite confident we can produce a volume with presentations or the papers resulting from those presentations. So maybe we can write together an article which would be submitted to a journal, or maybe, I was thinking, we can write together a text that would be part of that volume. So we would have the individual papers, but also something more than our individual perspectives. We could have the result of this encounter. How about that?
Sounds
That sounds
very
good.
good.
The atmosphere of the group is very special. Maybe the common text would keep something from that.
Yeah, I think actually many of such kind of things organized by RVP. Some of them, they got the achievement and published. That leave something for the future. I think it's important. If every conference can have a book after 5 years, 10 years, that will be great. So actually you take the note to the record. I don't know if you can find someone to try to write on that, and then ask each of us to revise that. That will be very good.
To translate in words.
To put in words everything that was said and to send the copy to everyone and someone to edit what he said.
Yeah,
And this can be
revise,
the
that
common
will be
work.
very good. Because that this actually different
Just
with the
maybe
people.
the starting point of
The starting point.
the developed, more developed. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we keep the flow of the
Yeah.
discussion.
That will
But at the same time, also we should have some kind of time frame. It cannot go on. Yeah, because when we want to achieve something, it also is time frame. That could be agreed upon also.
And when you finish the paper in English, I'd like to try to translate that into Chinese and publish that.
Maybe
That would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
And also different country here.
Yeah.
I'm now actually the chief editor of the Journal of our university for social science. And we can also find many magazines they like to publish such kind of paper because there are different viewpoints from different countries. I think that,
so it can be relevant.
yeah.
I think maybe the common part should continue and address the questions, the central questions that came up today, or if someone wants to
So we have
contribute. So otherwise, I agree with you very much. You have to keep a sense of time and also of how far you expand. So some borders are probably be needed for this too. And maybe the questions that are here are the
ones
the
that should be
borders.
addressed.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think they're very relevant and very encompassing a lot of aspects of what came up yesterday and today. They expanded some
So
more.
what should be the steps?
So we could just develop on what we said, what we discussed today.
half an hour, okay, the overall.
And of course, if we have more ideas, that's wonderful.
For half an hour, no problem, half an hour.
The steps would be first a group, a WhatsApp group,
I'm
or a
out there,
different
out
group,
there.
it can even be a
Okay,
meeting
yeah,
group.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Then the second step would be for us to send you an email with one instructions for the papers, because I insist on also having the papers published. And we will decide on a deadline together. Is this year okay as a deadline? Would you need more? 3
We're getting
months?
pretty close to the end of
3
the
months.
year.
3 months, would that be okay?
End of February maybe?
Yeah. As a first deadline?
That is very
Good, good.
That's
large.
out to the
February.
forest.
First deadline.
As a first
Okay.
deadline.
Yeah.
I'm
At the
just,
beginning
I'm
of March
asking,
is
I'm
the
not.
other deadline.
As a first deadline and the last deadline.
Deadline is where you lie dead, right?
We like that.
Just the first deadline.
It's the late deadline.
For the papers, and in the meantime, maybe we can also work on the common text.
Yeah, that sounds.
And we can
Through-
provide
through-
a
through Wiki,
transcript
through
of
this-
the.
through Wiki.
We can use Google Docs also.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not that keen.
We can
again, but,
share
I've
everyone the same
tried
document on Google
Docs.
Docs.
The
I've
only thing
tried
about
Google Docs, I find them a bit inhibiting because no one really starts writing, you just get this blank page. And you wait for someone else to begin.
No, but we'll put the recording on the Google Docs.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
Ah,
something we can do.
okay.
And
The
then
only
someone will
fault
add.
that you have to check, because what I like about Wiki is that what you see is if you deleted me, I don't see what you just deleted in the final, but there is another section
Yes,
called
this
history,
is a good thing.
where can I reverse or I can.
You can see
so
what has
it's
been
like,
changed.
so it's not really deleting, but
Yeah.
but maybe
We must-
Google Doc can do that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
That's
you
what I was
should
thinking.
do it manually to write the changes.
Right,
That
like
would be
follow
better.
change, like track changes.
So it needs to have two documents.
Mm-hmm.
One document, the original one, and the second document, everyone to
Edited.
write what he has changed,
Mhm.
the changes, so the history of changes to the document.
Mhm.
This is why we should.
Okay, whatever is convenient for all.
Maybe.
Remember, some of us are not that knowledgeable about these things.
Yeah.
As long as there's instructions.
Silence of
Okay.
heroes.
I
I can make
don't wanna
the
sort of,
process
as I said,
instructions.
delete everything because I wasn't sure. I think I put this in here. No, where's it gone? It's disappeared. And I'll have to quickly pretend it wasn't needed.
So we have the timeline, the steps. We will send you this message.
When the line dies, the line resurrects, right? So we can.
In Jerusalem.
We can like multiply it.
Yes, it's a great experience for us to organize this meeting, because we have, as you saw on the PowerPoint, we have a history of organizing this project. And it's a real progress now. It's a real progress. And this progress comes from you. You know, something happened. Very interesting. Maybe because you are so many from abroad, I don't know. Maybe the topic was very inspiring. Maybe all together. Maybe we are living a moment in history where this topic is important. So everything put it together, I think will bring something valuable from this I wasn't, sincerely speaking, I wasn't expected to happen like this. I thought, what will be the result? And of course, Dani, I am Dan and he's Dani, so we are very.
Originally it's Dan.
This is Dan, okay.
Yeah, it's also Dan.
Sort of
Dan told to Dan
No, Dan.
about what is the most important thing to do. So thank you very much. Guiding in a very practical way something about the outcome. And of course it's about borders, so borders it's a very practical matter. And probably let's think to this point also. If we consider that we should do more, we can start a project. Not a big project, just to continue meditating and thinking. Adding some other people from China to meet. But after we finish this stage, because otherwise it will be a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
If this outcome is satisfactory for us, no? If we think that it's worth to do something more, maybe there will be no more fences in 1 year, more walls, or more restrictions. Can be the path to restrictions now. As you see, Trump about Mexicans and so on, so on, so on. So I've met an Indian professor on the Chinese Wall when I visited the Chinese Wall, the Great Wall, and he told me there will be a problem. He's a statistician, and he saw the resources. You talked about resources.
Yeah.
And the lack of resources will create a big tension among countries. So the borders will be weaker or stronger? This is the question.
That's the problem.
No? So your 5 way of interrogating the question is very important. Because it's about new future, I think. The new future will be not as we think now. And probably the lack of resources or our demand of higher standards bring pressure on this. And I don't know, we'll see. It could be 1 or 2 years, but probably our topic will be more and more relevant for the future time. So from the philosophical, from the cultural way of dealing with this, we can say more than from the political, from the economic. It's more complex. And we can add a way of developing, of thinking about some complexity on the topic. Yeah. So we can conclude this great meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us, I want to thank Dan. This is an Indian way of honoring a special person. But this is not from my place, it's from the northeast. They do this with the hand. And okay, so we honor a person who means so much to us and values us. So in the name of every one of you, can I do this?
Yes.
I just wanted to say thanks to Dan and to the organizers, others also. I know that
To Wang, because she is very
involved. Yes.
She is very important.
Yeah, that's exactly. So I know, but more symbolic and meaningful. I hope. I don't know. Thank you to everybody. Thank you very much.
Good. Oh, let's take a group photo. We share that one.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your very good hospitality. Yes. Thank you.
Far away from what I wish to.
But of course better.
At least we have rooms. This is good.
Yeah, this room is actually suitable to this.